What the fuck? Hey everybody,
Hello.
how's it going?
Good. Hi.
Give me 1 second. Actually, I'm letting a. I have a bit of a cold coming on, so I have a zinc tablet dissolving on my tongue right now. Um, so give me 1 minute to go get some more water. Um, and then we'll get started. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, so I believe that. Let's see. I've met with Chloe, Gabby, Henrika, and Miri. Um, Daphne, I saw your email just before class. My mornings are not so good. What's the rest of your day like tomorrow?
Tomorrow afternoon, I'm actually gonna be in a longish doctor appointment, so I
Okay.
probably won't be available. And then I've got class after my appointment.
Okay.
So I'm yeah, tomorrow probably won't work then.
Okay. I can do Friday before like 2:30. I could do Friday around noon if that works for you.
Um, so are you free at all like later in the afternoon?
No, I'm booked up from 3 p.m. onward or from like 2:30 onward.
Okay. I have another appointment at noon that day and I don't want to be
Okay.
gone from my job for like 2 hours.
For sure, for sure.
Um,
Okay, in that case, what about Sunday?
yeah, Sunday should work.
Okay, cool. Yeah, let's we can pick the it my Sunday's pretty much wide open. So
Yeah,
uh
same.
yeah, okay. Well, we'll coordinate a time over email.
Sounds
Um
good.
uh so Chloe and Miri, I just met with y'all today. So I don't expect you to have started you know, any work in the past like, few hours. But for next week, I'd like to see you I'd like to see you start up work on your uh on your final project pages, implementing some of the stuff that we started talking about today. Um, and Henrika, I got the invite to your project. So after the lecture, you and I can do like I think there's a way to like break it. Like, yeah, after the lecture, we can set up a breakout room and just sort of like talk over um, your what you submitted. Um,
Okay.
and Gabby, have you started working on anything or?
No, not yet. I've been doing other homeworks lately, so I think I'll
Okay,
get to it by the end of the week.
that's cool. Yeah, if you can have a start, if you can be started on implementing it by next but I'd like to see some work. I'd like to see work from everybody next week.
Okay.
So cool. So today's lesson, you're probably all going to be somewhat interested in. let's and there's barely, excuse me, actually, there's barely any slideshow going on here. It's going to be almost all code demo today. So today we are going to talk about JavaScript plugins. Basically, plugins are pre-made components or components that let you implement really common effects. And these are common and so ubiquitous that you don't necessarily want to rewrite them from scratch every single time. So what plugins allow you to do is plugins allow you to implement a feature with or implement some functionality in your site that that's often more extendable or more feature rich than what you might have time to, even if you were, an extremely gifted coder who could build everything from scratch. If you're on a deadline and you don't have the time to build everything from scratch, it's very helpful to have pre-made customizable chunks of code that you can drop in and fit into your project. So that's where plugins come into play. We're going to look at two plugins. We're going to look at a plugin for building image galleries called PhotoSwipe. We're going to look at how to build an image gallery from scratch as well, and then we're going to look at PhotoSwipe and just to sort of demonstrate how much more work it is to build something from scratch versus sort of how much more you get for a lot less work if you use a plugin. We're also going to look at a plugin called Wow.js, which is for implementing effects on scroll. It does this by leveraging CSS animations, and all you have to do is include a JavaScript library and add some class names to the things that you want to animate, and it makes it extremely easy to get some really slick looking effects. That's the entire slideshow, all 3 slides of it. So we're going to jump straight over to Glitch. And tell you what, I am going to go to my class examples from last semester. I'm going to add this to fall 2021 class examples. Come on. I'm also going to add this one. And I'm going to add, let's see, which ones have I done? Did I do? Wow.js, carousel. Okay, and PhotoSwipe. Okay. So let's look at how I went about implementing an image carousel completely from scratch. Let me show you how the final product came out. I have, for each image, I have, excuse me. I have a row of thumbnails across the bottom and a main image display above that with a caption for each image underneath. I have, I can navigate by moving, I can navigate by clicking through. If I click past the end, it loops around to the beginning again, and vice versa. If I click past the end, it loops around to the beginning. Or if I click past the end, it loops around to the beginning. If I click past the beginning, it loops around to the end. I can also click the thumbnails and go straight to those pictures. As you can see, the pictures are slightly, there's still some improvements to be made here. So let's look at how this works. I'm using jQuery as my excuse me. jQuery as my JavaScript library. So the carousel, the main image display is in this div. I have a div called carousel container. I put the left arrow in a div. It's a link. I'm using an icon font to set those arrow right and arrow left. I have another one on the right here, and then in the actual carousel element, I have the image inside a container. Let me do this actually. Let me see here, because I want the so okay. Right, so now that contains a little better. So then underneath the underneath this main part here, I have all of my thumbnails. Each of these is there's a lot of flex boxes going on here to implement this. But each of these, there's a flex box containing all of these elements, and also each one of these little thumbnail containers is in a flex box. So that's the markup. It's a lot, it's kind of a lot of markup, but for, actually not that much content. Now let's look at the JavaScript. So the goal I had here, you'll notice that these things have these attributes called data-inc, which stands for which is short for increment, and data-index. So the data attribute is basically, I can add, that allows me to just add my own custom attribute to any HTML element so that I can set and so that I can retrieve that data in JavaScript. So let's check out first the way that this is set up. Remember from last week, we talked about arrays and we talked about objects. I have, okay, this should be let. I have a list, or I have an array that I've named items. Each item in the array is an object with two properties: a source property, which is the path to the image, and a caption property, which just contains the text of the caption. So by default, we load the page on the first image, which is this image. Then basically, let me just do this. Oh, there's no replace all. I'm just going to replace these with let real quick. Okay, so I have a function here called update image. The first thing I do when I click it is event.prevent default, because all of my clickable elements are hyperlinks and I don't want them to try and navigate somewhere. I'm just using them for the sake of being a UI element. So I check to see if I catch first I check to get what the increment, what the data-inc, the data-inc attribute. I check what the value of that attribute is, and I stash it as a variable. I also grab the data-index value and I stash that as a variable. Notice that I use the .data method and then just the name that came after the hyphen in order to do that. So let's look at those attributes again. Notice that these down here, the clickable thumbnails do not have the data increment attribute at all, whereas these have a data increment attribute that's equal to true. Remember how we did, remember when we talked about true and false values and how there are certain values that are what we call falsy, where they they are not a Boolean true or false value, but they will evaluate as false. In this case, it's either going to be true or it's going to be undefined. So if it evaluates as true, let's look at what the index property is. It's either -1 or 1. So if we click arrow, so we take the current index, which refers to the index in the array of the image that's currently being displayed. So if we add current index plus the value from the data index property, we will get either we will either add or subtract 1 from current index. If that takes us below 0, we set the new index equal to 1 less than the number of items in the array. Because remember that since we start counting from 0, if there are 12 items in the array, the index of the last one will be 11. So that's how we grab that. On the other hand, if the new index is greater than or equal to the number of items, the number of items in the array, then we've counted it. Remember, because we go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. If we hit 12, we've gone outside the limits of the array, past the end of the array. So we just reset it to 0. That's how we get this loop around function. So here I'm subtracting 1 from 0. That resets the value to 11. Here I'm at current index 11. If I click this, that'll make the index 12. That's greater than or equal to the number of items in the array, so it becomes 0 again. Otherwise, so that function allows me, this allows me to use one function to handle both these navigation elements and these navigation elements. Because in the case that increment is not a true value or a truthy value, that means then that I've clicked one of these. These have a different data increment property. These just specifically reference an exact place in the array. So in that case, say I click this link with data index equals 6. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Then all I have to do is just set that index like that's my current index. So now that I've gone through this logic to figure out what the index of the object I'm going to use is, I can cast a new variable, let new image equal, and pull that item from the array. And you can see that I'm console logging it. So it's dogs3.jpg, tiger dog, right? Etc. So, excuse me. So now all that's left to do is find this image element and update its source attribute to point to the new image. So I'm taking the source attribute and I am setting it equal to I'm taking the source attribute of the image tag in the document, and I'm setting it equal to the source property of the new image object that I pulled from the array. Then I select the caption text, which is this paragraph. And I just insert the caption from this object as text. Then I take this update image function and I bind it to anything with the class carousel control. And as you can see, that's both these links that give me the left and right arrows, and it's every gallery item, or I mean, it's every thumbnail gallery item. So, and you can see that before this is still not quite even really at a point where I would call it shippable yet, because there's still you know, some issues. I want to be able to just arbitrarily put any image in here and know that it's going to fit and know that it's going to look right. So there's more logic I need to add to this to really get it to a point where I would be comfortable showing it on a web on a professional site. It also doesn't open things in a lightbox. There's no way to share anything to social media, etc., etc. Those are all things that would be nice to have. So with that said, let's take a look at what how this would be done using a gallery or using a plugin like PhotoSwipe. So PhotoSwipe, here's the demo page for PhotoSwipe. And when I open one of these images, I get a zoom in effect. I get pagination with a counter. I get captions. I get the ability to zoom in and out. I get a full screen widget. I get the ability to share this or pin it or to tweet it or download it. All from, so it's much more rich functionality. I can also customize it so that I don't have all that stuff. Notice that if I pick the minimal mode, I don't have captions. I don't have the social media sharing, but I still have the pagination and stuff. So it also supports touch gestures, which is not something I'd even come close to implementing in my custom thing. You can use pinching and spreading to zoom into pictures or to close the gallery. You can swipe through to paginate. You can also, it also uses the browser's, it manipulates the browser's history so that you can link directly to a picture. And if you put in a link with the right, if you type a URL with the gallery and picture ID in it, it'll let you just jump straight to opening that picture in the gallery. Although that's an optional feature that you have to include or exclude. But so let's take a look at how this works. First of all, what I did was I went to their GitHub page and I went and I clicked the code button and I downloaded this as a zip. Then I took the files that were in there and I uploaded them. There's a certain I did this through I built this locally and uploaded it to GitHub and imported it to Glitch that way. So that's why there's like a .gitignore file and stuff. You can ignore that. You can ignore the gitignore file. That's also why sort of there's stuff that's in folders. Although you can get Glitch to do that if you know how. But so I included these are all the files that were in that PhotoSwipe zip. So in my file, I pull in the photoswipe.css style sheet. I pull in the PhotoSwipe default skin style sheet, and then I pull in my own. I pull in jQuery. I pull in the photoswipe.js library. I pull in the PhotoSwipe UI, default UI JS library, and then I pull in my own code. There are, again, let me change these to let. Notice that this looks very similar to the list of items that I created for the custom built image carousel. It's each item in the array is an object, but instead of source and caption, this time, if I wanted the caption, I would include that as a property. But but you have to put the width and height of the image. That's one of the things that the library wants asks you to do is it wants you to add the width and height for each of these. Notice that, so this is my thumbnail gallery, and it looks pretty much the same as the thumbnail navigation that I did at that I used for the custom built one. Now there's all this markup. This is copied straight out of here. Literally, I just copied this out of the web page. See how much stuff there is? I copied all of this and just pasted it into my document. So there's that's all pre-made for me to use. Now let's jump over and look at the JavaScript that I wrote. So for each image, I created, so let me do some swaps again. Okay, so I have a function called open photo swipe. Notice also, by the way, this is functionally identical to writing it like this. But you can also declare functions as variables. This can come in handy if you ever need to like recast the variable and use and like bind a different function by the same name. But don't worry about that. That's more advanced JavaScript than we really need to go. Then we really need to get into. So at any rate, I am passing in a property called index. I'm putting an underscore in front of it because index is a word that gets used elsewhere in the functionality. So by putting an underscore in front of it, I can tell like, okay, this one is the property and this one is the variable name. Let's look at the documentation again.
Wait, Carl, 1 second. So the underscore index is the variable?
Yeah, this is a variable that's getting passed into this function. So
Got it. But
yeah.
the underscore is just to like differentiate the name. Like, so you could have totally put like index 1 or something.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
The underscore is just the underscore in the variable name is just to differentiate it from the other properties of the around here that are called index.
Okay.
So let's look at the documentation. we select the photo swipe element, which has which is the element with the class PSWP. This is all written in vanilla JavaScript, and I translated it into, I translated it to jQuery. So here's where I selected the photo swipe element. Because class names can be reused, and because there can be multiple items with a given class name within a single page, anytime we select items by their class name, what we will get will be a list. It will be an array, always. If there's only one class, or if there's only one element on the page with a given class, what we will get is an array with only one item in it. So that's why this bracket 0 is here, is we are selecting the first item in the array that is returned when we select when we select by a selector that can give us multiple results. Does that make sense? Is that clear? I can demonstrate. Let me so if I select I get see how this is in square brackets, and there's an item at 0 with and this has a length of 1. That's how you can, if it has the length property and it's got those square brackets, it's an array. So if I want to just directly grab the photo swipe element itself, I need to just get the first item in that array. So now, the documentation tells us to select our photo swipe element, build our array of items, and here's where I've been. Here's where I've added a little where I've customized it. They have us create an options object with an index property that tells us which slide to start at. I am allowing, so I'm hijacking that. Every time I click one of the thumbnails, I pass its index into that open photo swipe function and set that as the slide to start from here in this option array. Then I initialize the photo swipe. Then I initialize the photo swipe plugin itself by calling let gallery equal new photo swipe and passing in these 4 arguments: the element, the UI defaults, my list of, or this is just a name for which UI to use. So UI default, my list of photos, my items list, and my options object, which just has the index to start from. So I create a new instance of the photo swipe plugin, and I initialize it. I do that every time I click on a gallery. I do that every time I click on a thumbnail. So the result, see how this handles the sizes of the different images so much better? It also gives me all these other options to zoom in, zoom out, full screen, share to Facebook, download, etc., etc. So I can have multiple galleries in a page as well by just setting up another list of items. And so here in this link where I have click to look at random images, let's look at that in. So this has the ID of open another gallery. It's exactly the same. I just pass in a different list of items. And that allows me to open up there's only 2 pictures in it, but that allows me to open up another gallery in the same page. So see how much more robust this functionality is and how much less code I had to write to get it. That's the that right there is the big value add of working with a plugin. So if you if you're interested in building an image gallery, I would suggest that you take a look at this class example. I'll also drop the link to this plugin in the chat. It's just photoswipe.com. So, but really, it's kind of, I wrote a lot less code and got a lot more functionality. So that is the big value add of working with a plugin. If this had been for a client on a deadline, and I wouldn't have had time to make the Scratch built one look like all of this and add sharing features and all of that. So plugins take a lot of that kind of, this is why I call this lesson how not to reinvent the wheel, because someone else has taken a lot of time, has put a lot more time and effort than I have to build this. Someone else has already put in the time and effort, so I may as well use it. Let's check out another. Let's check out WowJS, because scrolling effects look really cool, really slick, but they can be really annoying. They're extremely finicky and annoying to implement from scratch. So let's take a look at this. First of all, let's find WowJS. So this is built on top of, I think I showed y'all the animate.css library, where there's all the custom animations that are just made in CSS that you can just throw into your project by just adding these class names. WowJS is built on top of animate.css, and it just throws those animations in on scroll. So notice that as soon as things appear in the viewport, so no need. This is even easier to use. So here I have jQuery. This isn't jQuery. This is via CDN. I've linked in the animate.css library. And here I've included WowJS. I'm not using my own JavaScript at all. All I did was I give it the class wow. and then I add the animation style that I pick the animation style, I add the class wow, and then I add the class name from animate.css. Although I also have to, I did find that I had to add these classes in order to make it work as expected. But notice, again, here are those data attributes. I can tell it how long I want the animation to go for. And then all I have to do to make this run is at the bottom of the page, throw in a config object. So wow equals new wow in all caps, and I just pass in some configurations, and these are all just default values. The box class is wow, so that's what it looks for. Animated class is animate class is animated. We leave this at 0. We say it should work live and it should work on mobile, and then we initialize. And what do we get? Let's also just check my style.css. My sections are 800 pixels apart, so that I just put a bunch of gutter space in there so that it would be big enough. So now as I scroll, an element pops into view. A second element pops into view and does something different. And another element comes in and does something different. I did not write the only JavaScript I wrote was this. All I had to do was initialize and configure and initialize the plugin and add some CSS classes. It's that easy. But you can see how you need to understand some basics of what a data object is, how, like, what a method is, how to initialize it, how to, in the case of the image gallery, that's why we needed to know arrays so that we could set up that list of images. So here, let me drop the link to wow.js in the let me drop the link to wow.js in the chat as well. Okay. So tell you what, it's only 7:30. Let's do a little bit of research. We're probably going to end class early today. But let's do a bit of research and see if we can find a excuse me. Let's do a bit of research and see if we can find a good library for implementing an animated cursor, because that is an effect that several of you want that is kind of complicated to build from scratch. So let's there's WordPress plugins. Okay, this is not for mouse cursor effects JavaScript. Let's see. Okay, so here we have, excuse me. Sorry. One moment. Let me just So here we have a CodePen collection of various mouse effects. These are not necessarily going to be plugins, but they'll be very similar. When people put projects up on CodePen, their intent is for it to be an example for you to work from, not necessarily download my code and use it, but see if you can do this yourself, kind of thing. So let's check out and see what we have. Wow. Okay, this is real slick. So let's take a look at our code here. First, let's look at let me see, how do I okay. Okay. So, all right. So we're utilizing here. We're getting this draw effect, utilizing the canvas, which we haven't talked about and which is not part of the curriculum. But the canvas is for rendering graphics in JavaScript. Let's minimize the HTML and go back to okay, so the pencil. Okay. The pencil is itself a canvas event, so, or a canvas object. So let's look at the JavaScript. All right, this is more complicated than I want. Okay, this is more like it. So we're in, so this is in jQuery. So, oh, that's really neat. So we're using an SVG. I'm assuming to create this this orb. And then on mouse move, we get the position of the box that contains all of the dots. And then we just reposition the dots according to where the mouse cursor went. It's actually quite simple, really. How about this? let's go. Let's do this. Let's try. I'm surprised that there's not a good plugin that's readily available for doing animated cursor stuff. So let's find that. Let's go back to that CSS tricks tutorial. Let me pull that out of my. Okay, so here's the tutorial for creating where it talked about how to implement an animated cursor. So what this is doing, and this is using a JavaScript library called CoffeeScript that just allows some custom JavaScript functionality. So let's do this. Aha, okay. That's better. So, all right. So there's the inner circle and the outer circle. So let's do this. Let's just make an empty div. Let's see what their CSS looks like. I'm not going to do I'm not going to do this exact effect, but I'm going to do something similar. Okay. Yep. Follower, position absolute, top 50, left 50. So we'll just include that. For the circle, let's check what they did. Yep, so they're using a CSS animation. So we'll do The border radius property, by the way, is what we use to round off the corners of a rectangular element. So if we make an element a square and we set its border radius to be half, if the width and height are equivalent and the border radius is half of that, then what we end up with is a circle. So let's check out the keyframes. I'm just going to yank these, honestly. So copy. All right. Yeah. And then we'll make the background. Cool. And so there's the thing that's going to end up being my cursor. There's the little ball, right? Built entirely in HTML and CSS. Now comes the fun part. Of translating all of this into jQuery. So let me so first we'll do let follower equal the follower element. We'll do oh, where's that printout? Okay, this seems kind of over-engineered. But let's just try this. I can't tell where that printout element is supposed to be either. There's not an element in here called printout. Let's look at this on CodePen. Okay, that whatever that printout thing is, it's not. Okay, it doesn't appear to be in here, so I guess it's not that important. Let's so we'll ignore it. We're gonna do this. We're not going to worry about that at all. This is what's called this is what's called an arrow function. This is part of a form of JavaScript called ES6, which just allows for more allows for more succinct syntax. So what we can do is, but basically what we've got here is this. And then we can do this. Okay, so then aha, okay, I see what's happening here. But I don't think we need to do quite as complicated as the way they're doing it. They're setting a super slight delay after you move the mouse, like a 1 millisecond delay to after from after you move the mouse to when it repositions the element. But I don't think we need to do that. So yeah, so let's do this. actually. I think, let's see. Aha, $sign is not defined. So I forgot to include jQuery. Okay, not quite there yet. Ah, okay. Interesting. Oh, I know what I did. I flipped X and Y. Yep, there we go. Check it out. Now all I have to do is hide the cursor. And there we go. I've just built an animated mouse cursor. So I'll add this to the the class example page, and you can you are more than welcome to use this code. You can copy as much or as little as this if you as you'd like. I would suggest that you at the very least change the animation, because I did just copy this straight off of the code pen. So I would suggest, if you want your that you do your own CSS animation, but you can use this script for your to implement your custom cursor. Okay, well, that's about all I have for today. Does anyone have any questions about anything? Because we've still got, another hour and a half of class time.
For our final project, how much JavaScript are you expecting us to put into our website?
As much as you need. I would like to see, at the very least, I would like to see just a click event somewhere. You don't need to, if you don't want to go this crazy with JavaScript, you don't have to, but just some, I would like to see at least one JavaScript function somewhere, just to sort of demonstrate that you learned even something about even something from it. If it's not an integral part of your design, don't feel the need to go overboard. One really easy thing, or one really common thing you can do, is if your site shrinks down to mobile size and needs a drop down menu, that's a perfect place to use JavaScript to show and hide your drop down menu.
Could we maybe go over that in class next week? Or can I find that somewhere?
Yeah, let's tell you what, let's
Okay.
do that right now.
Okay.
Let me go back to here. And let me go back to, where's the media query one? It says it's in here, but it's not. Come on. Okay. Anyways. So so let's look at this. Um where's my right? Okay. I don't want it to be like that right now. So so by default, I have a nav bar that shows up like this, you know, as a, let me take that fish button out. Let me, so and also let me see why this icon isn't loading. I have I just stopped importing the font. That's all. Yep, there it is. Okay. Let's make that a little smaller and not quite so green. Okay. So as I scale down, right, actually, I want to scale this in. So then I do want this to be invisible. Now let's pull jQuery in. Or actually, first of all, so in my responsive mode, where I turn off so now on a screen size on a screen that's 768 pixels or wider, I will have a nav bar like this, right? That's sort of like a bar at the top of the page with the items justified to the right. As soon as I go below 768, it disappears, and I have this hamburger icon. Now, when I now let me import jQuery. And since I'm only going to write one thing, I'll just do the script I'll just write the JavaScript in line. So okay, so now I can use jQuery. Gives me a visible and a hidden selector that I can include when I'm selecting. So I can do this. And now let's see what happens over here. Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. I can use this .not method Oh, okay, that's not what I want to do. Should be able to do it with .is. Yeah, okay. So we'll do this. If the nav is visible, hide it. Else, show it. So let's try that. Yep, there we go. And once I crank back out past 768, we just go straight back to the way it was on before on desktop. The span that the click function is bound to is hidden, so there's no chance of toggling this toggling this invisible on a desktop size screen because that UI element simply is not displayed. When I go back down, I can continue to toggle it open and closed at will. Okay. So let me add this project to, this should have been in the class examples. That's my bad that it's not. So let me go ahead and add it to that now. Let me get back to. Oh, it says it's in there, but you just can't see it in there. Oh, well. You can find it in, you can find it on my profile. Or here, I'll just do this. Let me do this. Let me post the, let me just post the link to this in the chat. I don't know why it says it's in the playlist, but it doesn't show up. I don't know why. So there you go. That project contains what you need to know in order to how to implement dropdowns. Okay. Does anybody else have a question? Okay, that sounds like a no to me. So Daphne, we'll be in touch about meeting on Sunday. And Henrika, I dropped some comments into your I dropped a few comments into your project.
Okay.
So just shoot me an email if you need any further help with those. Yeah, and I think, let's see, I've met with, let me see, I've met with just about everybody. I've met with Sarah, Miriam, Chloe, Henrika, Gabriella. I'm meeting Daphne this weekend. Okay, yeah. So everybody, pretty much everybody here has met with me. That's great. Next week, so for next week, if you haven't started on your final project page already, get started on it for next week. And I will see you then.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.